Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Many of us struggle with sales, whether it's from confidence, comfort, and just not wanting to be salesy. We want to help our customers. We know we can, but we complicate the process. This podcast is designed to help professionals like you improve at sales through process, practice, frameworks, and thinking differently about what you already know. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I'm here with the founder of Catalyst Sale, Mike Simmons. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Jody.
Mike, I've got an idea for this episode.
I love your ideas, usually.
So not long ago, we passed the milestone. Wait a second. You said you usually love my ideas.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just keep going. So not long ago, we passed the milestone of 200 episodes, and we talked a lot about what you've learned, what the show's been about. We've talked about podcasting. But my idea is, when we did the introduction episode to this show more than 200 episodes ago, things were quite a bit different. One, because it was you and Mike Connor, and now it's just you. And two, the whole business perhaps has changed. I'm not going to assume, but maybe you can talk about that, because now that it's just been you and you're making the decisions alone about where to go, what to do, what to focus on, I just think Catalyst Sale has changed. So I would like to step all the way back to that introduction episode and let's, in a way, redo it, because now Catalyst Sale is a little different and Mike Simmons is a little different. So I want to use this episode to reintroduce us to you and to Catalyst Sale.
Sounds good. And just a clarification, it's not just me. I mean, there's other people around, whether they're people who are outside of the organization, or they're people who are part of the team. There are multiple folks in and outside of the organization that continue to influence what we're doing and what we will do as we go forward. But yeah, this sounds interesting. Let's go.
Okay, so we need to start at the beginning. Who is Mike Simmons?
Guy who likes to wear black t-shirts, gray t-shirts, white t-shirts, sometimes with the Catalyst Sale logo. These times, more often than not, with the Catalyst Sale logo. I wear board shorts and flip-flops. I ride around on a beach cruiser. I'm just kind of a normal, everyday kind of person who likes to not take myself too seriously, tells really bad jokes, butchers movie quotes, and thinks I'm funnier than I am. At least that's what my family tells me. I think that I'm funnier than I am. I heard Kevin Hart talking earlier, and he said there's so many different people who've told him that he's not funny. So I said that to my family, and they said, yeah, but Kevin Hart is funny. So I thought there was alignment.
Well, earlier, before we started recording, I think you said a joke. I think.
Yeah, they just disappear. They go away. Sometimes. So here's the problem with humor. And again, a little bit more insight. I'll make the joke that, it's not my responsibility for the person on the other end to be smart enough to understand the joke. I can tell the joke, but they may not necessarily understand the joke. And again, there's a little bit of insight into me. Sometimes I'm way too freaking dry and extremely direct. So that's me.
All right. So let's get into your background. I want you to take us up to the foundation of Catalyst Sale, meaning when it was founded. So we mentioned it was you and Connor. And so I want to hit on two parts. What led you to start Catalyst Sale?
Yeah, so Mike and I had a number of conversations. It's tough to have the conversation without him around, because he was he and I working together on this, but we had the conversation about, he had always known that I wanted to start something and he was ready to go do something different. And so we had some conversations around what that might be. And originally we looked at it and we said, let's create a business where we operate as fractional chief revenue officers, fractional VPs of sales inside organizations. We build up a sales capability inside our company, and then turn around and sell that capability back into organizations. So we would incubate, so to speak, reps inside our organization, and then take that group or that pod of reps and sell them back into an organization. That never really happened. I mean, we tested it a couple of times. We had some initial customers where we started to do some of that work. We realized we really didn't understand the financial side of the business as well as we probably should. So a lot of lessons learned in that. It just becomes really expensive to outsource sales organizations into a group. And I know there are some people who figured this out in one way or another. We never did. We were just kind of going through the rotation, it seemed like, over and over and over again. And we were learning a lot of the same lessons over and over again. And that caused us to kind of pause and reflect and take a look at how do we do things different as we go forward.
So what do you think has stayed the same since you and Connor started Catalyst Sale together? There's been a few years now, and you've been on your own for a little while. But even though the business changed from what you started originally, and even though it changed that it's you now, you and your team, what has stayed the same?
Yeah, the foundational principles have always stayed the same. Look, there should always be some kind of sales process that an organization adopts. And it's important to understand and define what process is. Some people will look at process and say it's what the rep does. Some people will say it's what the customer does. Some people will say it's what the business does. And we've talked about this before, and I'm sure in another episode we'll get into more detail about the distinction between knowing things from a customer perspective, knowing things from the business perspective, and knowing things from a rep perspective. Because I do believe there are three distinct ways to look at the problem through. But the foundational stuff is always the same. One, sales is a thinking process. Two, there's a sales process that you use that should be very clear, unambiguous, easy to define across the organization, which will ultimately help with predictability and forecasting. And that there are a handful of things that we control as sales professionals. We control our attitude and our initiative. If we come in with the right attitude and we take the right approach in the way that we work with customers, and we could look at this as attitude, initiative, effort, etc. There are certain things that we can control as sales professionals, control those things and be comfortable enough with just letting the rest of the stuff kind of go. And all of that is still at its core the same. I mean, it's the way that I sold as an individual rep. It's the way that Mike has led teams. It's the way that I've led teams. It's what I've seen work over and over and over again. Where people get really confused is when they say, I need to have this specific type of rep who does things in this specific manner. So what you'll not get from me is you won't get scripts. You will get tools that you'll use and tools that you can apply to help, ensure that we're doing the right things at the right time for the customer. But I can't get someone to sell their product the same way that I would sell their product, nor can I sell their product the same way that they would sell their product. It's a very personal thing when it comes to sales. And where we miss is many times we try to be somebody else. If we try to be somebody else, we're going to put ourselves in a situation where we won't be our best self and we'll be uncomfortable, and our customers will be able to see that. So I think that's one of the things those are some of the things that have continued to remain the standard. There are people, there's technology, and there's process. And you've got to figure out what the mix of people, technology, process is, where you kind of iterate in each of those areas and adjust. And that adjustment takes skill and experience to know how to do the right things inside the right organization.
One of the things you've been doing a lot is creating content in courses, in lead magnets that you're putting out, or guides for people, and videos that these short videos. And I know that content is all based on your knowledge and experience. Give us some insight into some of the things that you've done in the past that are now leading to the content you're creating.
Yeah, it's all based on experience. Like, you go in, and I think one of the things that I continue to struggle with, and I look at this as the distinction between sales and marketing. When I think of sales is a very one-on-one experience, one-to-one experience. Marketing is more of a one-to-many type experience. There's a lot that I can do when I look at somebody through a video call, or I'm standing in their office and we're in front of a whiteboard and we're facilitating a discussion. There's a lot of things that happen in that engagement that are hard to have happen in an asynchronous format. So those things happen in a synchronous format where we're working one-on-one with each other. We're all we're operating in the same time and space. In an asynchronous format, they may be moving through those things at a similar pace, but they're not moving through those things at the same time. I'm not able to see the nonverbal. So what I've tried to do with the video content, and continue to work on this, is keep testing new approaches in the way that I deliver video content in chunks and pieces, bits and bytes, to see how people are responding to those, how they're applying those, and how that actually changes behavior, within groups of people that I work with directly to start to correlate how I think that will start to change behavior within groups of people who I've not had the chance to meet with directly. So that's why video has become so important to me. Video, audio, testing new things and communicating via LinkedIn. One of the things I'm doing now, if you go through and look at the LinkedIn post, I'm applying my approach to problem solving, the approach that I use when thinking about solving problems, to LinkedIn. I will define something. So what? Define the word. What are common mistakes associated with that word? And you first saw this in the timely topic stuff that we did where Dan was on, Lee was on, you were on, a couple of other folks were on, Jeff Knoll was on. What is the problem or what is the word? What are some common mistakes made or associated with that word? Why is it important? Why is it the problem? Why is solving the problem important? How have others solved the problem? How can we solve the problem? And if we take that approach, and that's what I've been doing lately on LinkedIn, we can start to deconstruct challenges that we're working on and get ourselves closer to actually being able to solve that problem, whether the problem is associated with things like bias, decision-making, thinking, goal setting, execution, clarity, focus. And these are just a number of the words that we've used. So I am testing a lot of stuff. I'm testing communication in LinkedIn, communication in Twitter, video through YouTube videos, posting on LinkedIn, posting on Instagram, obviously the podcast, but the foundational thing, the thing that leads to creating this content is the work that I do directly with organizations and with people within those organizations.
That actually makes me realize that you've been doing two things at once lately. One is continuing to build a strong brand for Catalyst Sale, but you also have been building yourself as a brand. Whether that's intentional or not, your face is out there, your voice is out there over and over, which I personally love seeing. What have you learned about building a personal brand versus an organizational brand in the work you've been doing lately?
It's good to know that it's not just my mom that loves seeing my face and my voice out there in the marketplace. So Jody, thanks. And that would be another example of one of those bad jokes that someone will give me a hard time about. I've learned a lot. One of the things that became really eye-opening, and this came out of the mastermind discussion. I think we shared some of this on a previous episode, but there was this point when Lee looked across the table and he's kind of like, so what? What does that mean? And we were talking about Catalyst Sale as a brand. And I started talking about it again. The nonverbal was awesome. And, Jody, you made a comment about being clever. Well, walking away from it, there were two things I was focused on, which are clarity and focus. One thing that came up, and this came through another conversation I had with someone. So this is the importance of having conversations with multiple folks. You start to reveal these blind spots that exist. The one thing I realized is that the answer to this question, if you were to ask any of the clients that I work with directly, who do they work with? They would likely say Mike. They wouldn't say Catalyst Sale. And that hit pretty hard because I've been building this company thinking, hey, we're building this thing called Catalyst Sale. And the reality was that's not what they need. So those customers that I work with directly, what they need is the stuff that's in between my two ears, the gray matter, the thinking that happens, the conversations that can facilitate, the insight and experience I can deliver inside their organization, the questions that I can ask that will reveal blind spots. They need me. They don't need Catalyst Sale. What we're doing now with the brand, or what I'm doing now with the brand, is separating me as the person who will go in and do the consulting work, at least at this point in time. Maybe we'll bring others on who can do this stuff as well. But separating me from Catalyst Sale as a company. And Catalyst Sale as a company going forward will be all about the media aspects of the business, the courses that we create, whether there's the goal setting and execution course called The Reset that's out there, or we're talking about demystify sales, sales for non-sales professionals. We talk about any of the other content creating. That will be the distinction between the two. And that distinction is product and service. So building a brand on both sides, in order to do that well, I've got to build me and I've got to build Catalyst Sale, and I have to build them separately because they serve two different purposes. On the services side, working with me, these are expensive things. The impact is, one, it takes a while to make the impact happen, but two, it takes time. Three, it's driven by a lot of experience. It gets really expensive if you want to work with me directly on the services side. Where I'm building scale is the ability to have you go through and do these things directly as an individual. If you're willing to do the work, go through the courses. So you have the frameworks and the tools and the approach and the methods and the questions that I would ask you directly, but you see it in an asynchronous format in the courseware that's out there. And that's the distinction between the two. The product side is more scalable than the services side. And we could get into a huge argument with people who would say, well, services are scalable if you do them this way. They might be. I've taken the decision to scale on the product side while continuing to be able to do the work that I do on the services side and have both of those work together. It might be the wrong decision, but that's the direction we're going right now. So we'll see what happens.
Well, with all of that, if someone wants to work with Catalyst Sale, what do they hire Catalyst Sale for?
Yeah, you hire Catalyst Sale for the improving awareness, improving understanding, improving information, improving process inside your organization using the frameworks that we've designed. And those frameworks are things like territory planning, which is embedded in the logo, which is about creating clarity and focus when thinking about your ideal customer profile at both an individual level and an organization level. Tools like, or processes like the Catalyst Sale process, which are binary questions that help you understand whether or not I'm in a given sale, even a given aspect of the sales process. Being able to do these things, leveraging things like account planning and call planning, designing for customer experience, but doing it in a way where you build through it on your own using frameworks and tools that have been battle tested in the marketplace and work. It's when you want to work on your own and work through those things. Now, I can deliver training, and we've got some other people who can deliver the same kind of training. So if it comes to training, that's where you're working with Catalyst Sale, courses, content, podcast. And just to be clear, the podcast is always going to be free. The blog will always be free. The courses are what you pay for. And the courses are self-directed with some structure that will walk you through the process. And that's what you'd work with Catalyst Sale on. And we'll see how that evolves. I mean, that may evolve where we've got multiple trainers inside Catalyst Sale who train on foundational sales skills training, or who need to implement a new sales process because their forecasting is just not what it needs to be. But there's a lot of companies who think that they've got a problem. Let's say they've got a comp plan problem, but the reality is they've got something else that's going on inside their organization. That's when you get into the consulting side. And that's where you're working with me based on that experience. And so I think there's always going to be this kind of overlap where they touch each other. The distinction, I would say, is asynchronous versus synchronous. Asynchronous meaning I can do it on my own through the course content. Synchronous, I need to work with someone directly. And that would be that on that side, it's working with me.
All right. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you about some of the Catalyst Sale offerings or to work directly with Mike Simmons, how do they do that?
Yeah, my direct messages are open on Twitter. Another way to connect with me is LinkedIn. I'm there. Just search for Mike Simmons and Catalyst, and I should just pop up. If you want to connect with me, those are two great ways to do it. The other way to do it is go to catalystsale.com. Live chat is out there. It will still all look like one thing right now. We're still working through the process of separating it. When you go to the About Us, you'll see more information about me specifically and how I can work with you directly. The best place to go is catalystsale.com. And I'm really just kind of interested in people's feedback. Is this more clear where you'd look at it and say, wow, now I've got a better understanding of why I'd want to work with Catalyst Sale or why I'd want to work with Mike and what the difference is? Or is it more confusing than ever? Because if it's more confusing than ever, then I certainly have a lot of work to do.
Well, there's always a lot of work to do, no matter what. All right, Mike, give us some final words about Catalyst Sale and the work you're doing and what you're most excited about with what's coming up.
The thing I'm most excited about is this stuff works. Like I'm just seeing it work over and over and over again. Now it's like anything else, it's hard work. So it's not a flip of a switch and then all of a sudden you see magic happening. But what ends up happening is you start to see and hear people talking differently about the interactions they're having with customers. They start to see the value in following process. They start to see the value in structure. They start to see the value in doing the work. So I'm most excited about seeing the change that's happening both in the organizations I work with and in the people who I've worked with who I know have gone through the course content. Feedback's been pretty strong. I've also heard them get a little bit better with the video. I'm a little bit less of the Ferris Bueller's teacher, and that's an old movie reference, and a little bit more natural. That will get better. I think if if anybody's out there and you're kind of wondering why you'd want to work with someone like me or why you'd want to work with our business, I would say this. If you've tried to figure out this whole sales thing and you feel like there's just a lot of noise in the marketplace, there's a lot of confusing stuff. You don't know if you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And everybody says, do this. And then a bunch of people say, do the opposite of it. And you're getting just caught up in the noise. There's this uncertainty. Give me a call. I'm happy to point you in the direction, whether it's pointing you to a specific podcast that we recorded around that topic and you can go through it yourself and then ask follow-up questions, or we work directly together on certain things, because my mission in all of this is to help people get better at sales. And the way that we do it is through process, framework, and thinking. And I know that if you're interested in getting better at sales, you can get better at sales if you just put the work in. There's no cookie cutter, there's no shortcut, there's no quick fix, but there is good process, good practice, and good frameworks.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.